talk a little bit. Before you spoke, we listened to David Kennedy talk a little bit about the war and how the American experience was actually very unique among the Allies in World War II. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your decision, why you decided to focus on America so much, and not leave out, but focus, de-emphasize the experience of the other countries.
I want to briefly have us both answer this. First of all, I'm an American filmmaker. That's who I am. All the subjects have been in America. This is what I know. And we made the decision to do it that way. So it was just too big a cataclysm to try to tell all the stories, and we felt this was the perfect way to do it. But we also knew that even though these were American stories, they were universal human stories, and we've had this validated. We were selected as an official selection of the Cannes Film Festival. We went there certain that they'd show one episode. They showed the whole thing, the longest film they've ever shown there, and the audience, we were petrified that they would see this as once again a myth of American exceptionalism, and that this wouldn't be, you know, I think they want you to move it way back, that this would not be representative of their experience, and that it was to the contrary. They saw in these 41 people very much like themselves. And that's the point of it here. I mean, after a while, you can't tell the whole story. So you have to say who will be a signal or representative story, person. And then if you do them right, it's not just that they're from America, they're human beings. And that's what it is. When Susumu Sato the other night, the gentleman from Sacramento, who was a Japanese American serving in the 442nd, broke down and cried on camera having seen someone die on the side of the road. He said, these are two German guys that would have been 19 years old. I could have gone to school with them. He said, that hurted me. He's not a Japanese American. He's not an American. He's a human being. And that's what we were after.
Thank you very much, Mr. Burns and Mr. Ward. Yes, I appreciate very much. I saw glimpses of your of the film, I mean the documentary. Unfortunately, my reception of the WTA where I live in Arlington was not very clear, but I did watch with horror and with all sorts of emotions, you know, those scenes about the Bataan Death March, and where Americans and Filipinos, shoulder to shoulder, lives with lives together, had died, marched, and died together, and survived together. From what I understand is that, I don't know what the figures are accurate, but 78,000 to 141,000, something like that, had marched during that war. Americans and Filipino soldiers. Now, you're right. It's too much of a story to really do justice to it. But you did also mention that in explaining why you call it the war, it's because it's a global. There was global involvement, and then also at the human level is that the story about the human experience, other than, you know, the strategies of war and stuff like that. But also you're historians. You're probably more of documentarians and historians and biographers, and probably less of reporters, although you're probably very good reporters too. But what I'm saying, and what I'm leading my question to, is that the Filipinos who fought with the Americans at that time, the Philippines was a colony of the United States, and they were considered not Filipinos because they didn't have their country, they didn't have a sovereign country yet at that time. So the United States owned them as U.S. nationals. Now, 60 years later, as we're speaking right now to you, probably 61 years later, is that these survivors of the war are still fighting for recognition for their participation in the war. You know, it's not so much the benefit, but of course, if benefits go with it, then so be it. Because if they're legitimately recognized as being, the question is, are you going to extend perhaps your documentaries, your storytelling, to focus to interview perhaps on those survivors, the Filipino, who are now Filipino Americans, who have great stories to tell, and some of them are in our midst?
You raise a good question, and it's very important. And there's always an anxiety, which we find completely misplaced, that somehow by doing this film, this is the definitive history of the Second World War. How could it possibly be? And we further limited our choice, and we put up a billboard in front of every single one of the episodes that says, as a kind of disclaimer, the Second World War was fought in thousands of places. Too many for anyone accounting. This is the story of 4 American towns and how their citizens experienced the war. We're very pleased to say that after every major documentary that we've made, where there has been a great deal of concern that it might be definitive or comprehensive, and we've always said it wasn't, or hand-wringing about what has been left out, hundreds of other documentaries have been made. And so I think we look forward in the wake of this series, and in fact PBS has already undertaken more than 40 separate ones alone that are beginning to deal with the very stories you're talking about, that no story, I think, at the end of this process will have gone untold.